Hi, I'm here with Gina Tabrizy. Thank you for coming on.
Of course. Of course.
So Gina, kind of like we left and just kind of both have had crazy days and just rushed in here and sitting down for a podcast.
Isn't that life?
I just sprung on you that my podcast is about people's stories who are either in recovery or work in recovery, which you kind of have both kind of things going on in a sense.
Yeah, I have a lot of it.
Yeah,
I can hit all those buttons.
So tell me a little bit about where you grew up, where you're from, what kind of family you came from.
Okay. So you hit me up and you know that I love to talk. I'm like, oh, give me any topic and I'll just get into it. I'm able to hit any subject. Then he's like, we're going to tell your story now. I went, anything but that, right?
Yeah.
So just like everybody else, I have a story, you know, and there's so many parts of that story that are so beautiful and so much that's painful for me. And that I own it, and I come by it honestly, as they say in the circles, right? And, you know, I am used to being on this side of the seat because I've been a therapist for 38 years, right? But I was a therapist when I was a kid. I was a therapist by the age of 12, I'm going to say. So in order to navigate my family, I had this pressing need to understand why I was that kid. Why? And it didn't stop when I was 5 years old. It kept going. And my culture and my family's roots is from Cuba, which I'm extremely proud of today.
Yeah.
And soy cubana y puedo hablar el idioma perfecto, aunque nací aquí en los Estados Unidos. So technically I'm third generation American, which is super weird, because that's a big part of my story is my culture. And there was a point in my life where I described myself as being culturally abused. And what I meant by that was, although I was born in the U.S., in New York, so I claim that too, I got that going on for me.
So you were born in New York, in the city?
Yes, in New York, in the Bronx. I was born in New York City Hospital. And I claim that, even though I left at 7 or 8, that often feels more like home to me, which is really strange to say than anywhere else I've lived. I've now been in California for 30 years. I still feel like I'm visiting.
You have New York energy for sure.
I do. And I bore 2 kids here that are born and raised here, and I'm still visiting. I just never got California, but I'm still here, so whatever. But the story of the migration of my parents, and I tell a lot of this in my book, and so shameless plug for one of my books is called Healing is a Love Story.
Sure.
It starts off with telling my story. I needed to understand why I became a therapist. I kind of always knew. I needed to understand the roots of my trauma. And the hardest part for me, that's my expertise, is in trauma. And then so, of course, addiction comes because there's no addiction without trauma. I'm sorry, but there's none. So if you didn't know that you had it, you know you got it now, right? And so I'm trying to find my root because I didn't have the addiction. Now, my brother did, and my brother's been in very long-term recovery, 30-something years. But I'm not knowing as a young teenager when that's happening to my brother, I'm not understanding that he's addicted to anything. I'm understanding that he's a lot of fun, and he breaks all the rules of the family that I was the perfect, I've got to do it all right kid and didn't know how to do. So I adored him and looked up to him, and I followed him. Everywhere he went. I followed him into his addiction, and I'll tell that story a little bit more. But I just wanted to be with him because I didn't quite get my parents, and that's that cultural desensitization that happens where your parents are so different from everybody else, and you don't understand. I'm going to cry. I said I was going to cry. But you don't understand as a kid, being different is not good. And so it would take decades for me to embrace my differentness. And now I tell people it's like I'm a freaking unicorn. Like I'm like a Swiss Army knife. Like I've got all these different. It sounds very braggart, whatever the word is, and I'm not a narcissist, I swear. I've tried diagnosing myself. But I own who I am today at 60 years old and what I have to offer. But as a child, I was so full of shame and a lot of self-loathing, which is very painful to say out loud because I feel for that kid. So you know me, you know the person that I am, you know what I do in the community, and you know that I'm willing to help just about anybody, even under the worst of circumstances, which I'm currently in, and we can talk about that too. But as a child, I'm like, how did I get so wounded if I had no sexual abuse, no physical abuse, no active addiction in the home until my brother becomes as a teenager, and he moves out. So I had a very short-lived time. I had him in the party phase more than the addiction phase, you know what I mean? And so I'm clueless. And I came to understand that my culture was something that wasn't accepted, believe it or not, in Miami, Florida. We moved from New York to Florida, and I'm in Miami, and it's the 1970s, and Cubans had not taken over because they took over, didn't they? Right. And they run the show. But at that time, we were weird and different.
So you were one of the first Cuban families in my, like, very few
We
Cuban
came
families.
pre-Castro.
Okay.
So we came pre-Mariel Boatlift, which is the most known, the massive migration out of Cuba under Castro. My parents came under Batista. And the weirdness of that story, and everybody keeps telling me to write it, is my father was second-generation American, born in Cuba. His father was born in Key West, Florida. His father was born in Spain. So we come from Las Islas Canarias, the Canary Islands, hence the light eyes.
Yeah.
My hair is brunette, but my parents were both blonde and blue-eyed, very fair skin, and could easily blend in to what looked like typical Americana. But yet I was darker than they were. And I'm not that, I have olive skin, but not, I didn't look so different from my peers. But my last name gave me away, and it was Hernandez, right? So there's Smith and Walker and Max and Baxter, and then there's a Hernandez, and every time they call my name, I remember as a kid, people would turn around and look like they're looking for an alien, and I'm like, what is the deal? And I'm in elementary school going, and so I would turn around and look, because they're looking, so I'm like, I'm going to look too. What are they looking at? Who are they looking at?
Yeah.
But what I understood was my father did not know that he was American until he was drafted by the U.S. Army from the United States in Cuba. He got drafted to come fight in the Korean War.
Oh, wow. And that was the 50s, right? The late 50s.
Yes. So my dad was 18 years old, and he gets this letter, and he goes to his father, and he goes, oh, these stupid Americans, they sent me this letter. And he's like, Grandpa says, you got to go. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're American. He goes, what do you mean? I was born here in Cuba. I'm Cuban. I could just picture my dad just losing it. And he was the baby of the family. So all his brothers are married with kids. Nobody's getting drafted but my dad, who's the baby. And they treated him like the baby. He was like the treasured little angel of the family. And all of a sudden, he's like, you got to go to war, dude. And he's like, what? Okay. So there's my dad shipped off to Korea to fight for the United States. And he had grown up his whole life identifying as I'm Cuban.
Right.
So now he goes through the war, and he's courting my mother, which is a precious story, through letters and all this. And he comes back, and when they decide to marry, he tells her there's only one condition. If I fought and almost died for that country, and that's a story, I'm going to live in that country. Now, my dad was already getting the flavor of communism, so they're already under socialism, and he feels the heels of communism coming. Castro hadn't quite taken, we're talking months within, and I, need to be that good historian, and I need to look into the details, but it's within months of the takeover that my dad winds up moving to the United States.
That's fascinating.
And had he not done that, I would not be here.
Right.
So the gratitude that I have is immense for my dad's willingness to risk and just blindly go where no man had gone before, so to speak, from leading his family out. And my mother, too, who left everyone behind, and they all got locked down and locked back, and she never saw them. Oh, wow. So I grow up with this story, right? So my parents, extremely proud people, and extremely adventurous, though I think they didn't realize that about themselves.
Did you grow up speaking Spanish in your household?
It was my first language.
Okay.
It was my first language.
So when you went to school, you knew English too, or like by the time you were little, or did you
I
have to
don't
learn
remember
English?
learning English. So I think I probably didn't learn English until I went into kindergarten, and then automatically, you know how kids
Just
are
happens.
sponges,
Yeah.
And then I don't remember not knowing both languages, but I knew I spoke Spanish first. I really have a vivid memory of that with my folks. And I can remember, too, as a teenager, my mom, at some point, I started losing Spanish. I so desperately wanted to assimilate because I was being bullied for having the last name Hernandez. Like I said at the roll call, I have a vivid memory of being chased out on the field and kids circling me and just name calling and pushing and me running. I think a lot of my athleticism came from having to run away to protect myself. And that became a pattern in my life. And so that's part of the trauma. And that's why I said I felt culturally abused. I'm like, but I'm American. I'm born here, but you don't accept me because my parents weren't. But yet my parent technically was too. And it was this whole thing. Now, my dad had this immense pride in being American. And because he fought in the war and was so proud of being a veteran, like they were more American than any American I had ever met. And it's like their home was just plastered in American flags. And I can't even tell you the parades and the outfits and everything. 4th of July was like sacred, at my parents' house. And yet here I'm experiencing not being accepted, And I have a really, one really vivid traumatic memory of going to a restaurant as a young girl, somewhere between 7 and 9, and having a sign in the door that said, "No dogs, no Cubans." I kid you not.
Yeah.
I kid you not.
It was a different time back then, the 70s and the 80s,
I have compassion for, a lot of foreigners and for immigrants and for African Americans who have experienced that for forever. And so there's that part of me that identifies with the underdog and being ostracized and being different and not being accepted. And that on a young person is a heavy burden and can really push you into some really ugly spaces.
Sure.
And that, from having children and having worked with so many young people as a coach and everything. And I think I started to develop this, there's no knight in shining armor. I'm going to have to save myself from all of this. And I was in such a depression by the age of 13. My parents did not know. And I don't think I knew, but I knew something was gravely wrong. I didn't want to speak. So I started to can you believe this? This is actually Gina Tabrizy. I would mumble. I barely spoke above a mumble because I didn't see the importance of speaking.
No, I don't believe that. With you are such an outspoken person. It's like, it's hard to believe. Wow.
It really, really is. And my family started calling me the mumbler. And because they didn't get it. They thought, and God bless them, because I adore them today and work through all of these issues with them, but they saw somebody very painfully shy. I was very painfully wounded and had no esteem left whatsoever. I thought, why am I even breathing is where the next thought goes, right? Yeah. And so by the grace of God, I didn't pick up a substance. That's where my brother does. And so I'm imagining my brother must have had very similar experiences to me, and he found his escape there. I started running, and that was thank God. The athleticism is what was saving me and giving me any kind of sense of personal power. Like I could feel strong in those moments when I was running or doing soccer. And later on, it turns into music and band and marching band and all that. And I start to find myself in all of that. But my parents, being who they were, didn't understand. They so desperately wanted to be accepted. There's a lot of compliance. With my parents, there's a lot of minimizing what I'm feeling and just saying, keep your head down and just, stand in the line and be good and you'll pass. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like passing, like that new movie that they have, which was incredible. And I learned so much about the African American culture watching that I didn't understand. But I went, I understand the concept of trying to pass, And it was so bad at one point that I built a story around saying that I was adopted. So that people didn't think I was Latin. Right. And it's such a great part of me now. Yeah. Like, I can dance like nobody. Yeah. And that comes from that and my speaking voice and my charisma and all the things that people celebrate about me as my Latina. It comes from that side of the family. Yeah. It's my father for absolute sure and parts of my mother. I mean, it's like my dad incarnate, But to have that be such a frightening thing for a young girl to embrace. I just rejected it. And then I remember one day coming home from school and looking at my mother, and here I'm being raised Catholic too. So I am getting mounds of shame about, I just have to be perfect and follow everybody's rules and be what everybody needs me to be to pass, to be okay.
Yeah.
And it meant full rejection of everything that I was and what I was experiencing on the inside. All those why questions. Why are you like this? Why did you say that? Why did you do that to Paul? Why are you saying that to Dad? I drove my mom insane. And she didn't know how to answer a lot of my questions. She never questioned.
So you were shy, but you were always had the
in the family,
why,
yeah.
Why? Yeah.
I had that very inquisitive mind,
Yeah.
which is great for a therapist, right? So I start, and it drives her, and she doesn't know what to do with me. It drives her crazy, and my mom's answer was just because. You know, the typical old school mom, I don't know what to tell you, so just because, or just because I'm the mom. And I'm like, that's not good enough, you know, because a lot of what she did and how she disciplined me or what she taught me didn't make sense to me. And I knew it didn't make sense. So I'm trying to conform. And putting me in a position, somebody who's a unicorn, and telling them to conform is just to squash their soul, you know? And so that's how the depression starts to develop, because I start to give up the fight and asking the questions. So I let go of a lot of that, and then I make a decision entering high school that I'm done with this squashing, and it must have been God. I really don't know who intervened, but I'm like, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. I'm not going to be shy. I'm not going to hide. I don't care who likes me or who doesn't like me. I'm done with this. This is not good. I don't know if that just came from the exercise, from me reading things, because I start really reading psychology and self-help books.
So you go to books to find out why.
Yeah, there was a lot of self-help. There was a lot of self-help because my parents clearly didn't know what to do with me and didn't know I needed help. And it's so sad because that year of 13 to 14 years old, I was so clinically depressed. Barely speaking, barely moving out of the house, not really having friends, not socializing, showing no interest in anything. I'm like, oh my God, you know? And when I saw that in my kids, it was glaring to me, you know what I mean? At different stages of their life where they've experienced that, it's like, this is not normal, this isn't okay, we need help, we need to give resources, what's going on with you, dialogue and conversation. I was left alone to just figure it out. Like, she's shy, she'll be fine. It's like watering a plant. Just leave it, water it, it'll grow again, you know? And so I had a lot of pain around my parents not seeing that I was suffering. That they didn't see that emotionally I wasn't okay, that I needed them in a different way than what they were providing. And I always, you know, I taught this to my clients so much. It's like, you can love your parents and you can know they did the best they did. That doesn't invalidate your experience that they didn't give you what you needed or wanted. They could be the best parents. Well, you are a great parent. I'm a great parent. And I screwed up so much.
Sure.
Because I didn't know that's not what my kid needed. I gave them what I knew to give and what I researched to give or what I found help to give.
Yeah.
But I still missed the boat in so many areas, you know, and they'll let me know. And I'm like, yeah, I did, you know, because I didn't know. I didn't understand that, and you didn't have a way to convey it to me. And for that, I'm sorry. For the parts where I added to your inability to speak to me, whatever I did to not make that open communication, that I will forever feel pain by and make amends for, because that was my worst pain, was I couldn't talk to them.
Yeah.
You know, and how crippling that is for a child, you know, to not have that outlet in their parents. And yes, we turn to our friends, of course we do, you know, and when you have that, you're going to turn to your friends more. And then I decided maybe my brother's way is the right way. So I'm going to start using drugs now and see if I can pull that off. And so I'm this A student, honor student, on the board of everything, volunteer, you know, the good girl that mom and dad needed me to be, because my brother's the wild card, but I'm partying with him. And I'm trying to keep up with him because I'm now going to get my love from him. And that sets up a pattern in me to draw addicts and alcoholics into my life until it becomes my life work. And I go, I'll never work without him, so cool. Duh. Yeah. And it had everything to do with those early, and I just adored him. And I just saw the beauty in my brother. I didn't realize how much my brother was suffering. I didn't realize he was in pain. I didn't realize he was hiding everything that I was feeling he was hiding through his substances.
Yeah.
Not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough for my parents. He never felt like he could do any right with either of my parents, and he suffered so much. And I didn't know, but I was his baby sister, so I'm like, just love me, And there's a lot of pain around that too, and me understanding that I started to draw those relationships in my life, and I thought, if I heal you, somehow I'm going to get better. And ta-da, flaming codependent, that was my addiction and drug of choice, is let me fix everybody else. Everybody else couldn't fix me, didn't know that I needed fixing or help, so let me fix everybody else, because I can see that they need help and that they're suffering, and I want to be part of that, I don't know. I know I'm all over the place, but...
Not at all. Like, I'm following perfectly.
Good.
So, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So... the tragedy for me was being a very emotionally sensitive child and having a great depth and expression of emotions and constantly being told to squash them.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, I'm not that much younger than you. Mm-mm. And that's how you grew up back then.
It's our generation.
It's our generation. It's, you see these little memes on Facebook about riding in the back of the truck and seeing all the bikes in the front yard, and that was our social media where everybody was.
You come in when the lights go out. I still remember looking at the street lamps and being able to ride my bike everywhere and not wearing a seatbelt, and smoking was allowed in the cabins of the in the airport and in the
airport, and our house
in the
was
airplanes
full of smoke all the time because my dad smoked probably 3 packs a day, I think. I never remember seeing my dad.
Dad was cigars.
Yeah,
of course, like all
and you didn't
self-respecting Cubans.
You didn't talk about things like
There's no talking and there's no asking. You couldn't ask your parents about their history. Like all of these things, I got. Like even knowing that about my father, I learned when he was in his late 40s. And my dad I had the very traditional home with mom at home and, being the housewife. And she did odd jobs here and there for people. So she always had her own little side hustle going on. But she was always present. And then there's the dad, who's the workhorse, And oftentimes I remember my dad would travel and he'd be gone for a couple months and he'd come back. But I remember looking at my parents and watching my dad get all decked out in his suits and pick up his briefcase and be like, peace out, everybody. And then see my mom, what I considered slaving over the stove and the cleaning and the mowing the lawn and the groceries. And I'm like, ooh, I don't want to do that. I had a clear vision that I wanted to be like my dad. Yeah. And my personality matched his, so it made sense. But as a girl back then, I was still getting a lot of messages of, girls don't do that. But my mom kept trying to get me to cook, and I was like, hell no, clean, no. I got you for that. I don't need to. I mean, I rebelled against all of those female roles because I saw my mom as an indentured slave, really, to my father. And he was the man, and he ran the house, and he got served at the dinner table like a king and all this, and that's very cultural. And my mom had no qualms about that. It didn't hurt her. It hurt me watching it because I'm now in the United States of America, and we got choices, and we've got women's rights, and we've got all this going on. And I'm like, and I'm trying to reject all that. So again, there's that rift between me and my mom because I'm out there trying to be something she doesn't understand and thinks is wrong on some level, right? And my dad's behind me going, go for it. He thinks it's the coolest thing ever. Why? Because here's my brother who's not meeting his needs. My brother's nothing like my dad. He is now, Paul, you got to admit it. There's a lot of my dad in him, but back then, no, very, very different. He was a musician. He was like kind of a free spirit. He wasn't as interested in education. He certainly wasn't interested in manual labor. My dad's like that guy, that can fix anything and build a house from scratch. And so they're so different. My dad starts looking to me, I think, to fill some of the needs that he wanted. A kid, he wanted somebody who was very educated and went to school.
Driven, American dream.
He wanted the American dream thing. And my brother was just going with the flow and figuring out where his life's path was going to take him, which has been an incredible story in and of itself, while I'm doing this thing and being, daddy's girl and the apple of his eye and all this stuff. So I start leaning into him for all my love and support. Here comes my dad at 45 and has a massive heart attack, quadruple bypass, followed by 2 strokes. And I'm between 15 and 16 years old. Those were the years that I said, I'm not going to be shy anymore. I'm going to go live my life. I'm going to start partying. I'm going to be the fun girl. I'm going to keep my grades up and do all that, but I'm going to be party girl all week long. And I was holding up these two things, and then I have this happen with my father. And to me, he was my go-to. He was my person. And I would say that to his last breath. You're my person. So I am struggling with this idea of losing my father. And that's the first time I really feel the ground's going to get pulled from under me, because I didn't have that connection with my mother that helped me feel safe as a human and as a daughter. But I did have it with my dad. He was my protector. And he heard me, which was so strange. It's so contrary to his culture that he had much more tolerance for my emotions than my mom did. She had very little tolerance. And I will come to find later, it's because of the way her mother treated her. She was very unkind. My mother was basically raised like Cinderella. She was the servant of the family. She was the oldest daughter. She had to serve her sister. She winds up having to work, which was uncommon for a woman in Cuba at that young age. She would have been in her teens, early 20s, to pay for her sister's school. So it's like her sister was some kind of a prize to her mother, and my mom was just not. And so all of that gets mixed into how she's trying to parent me and not understanding how to give me something that she didn't get, I'm sure that makes sense. And so I'm seeking it from dad. So when I think that's going to be taken, I'm like, I can't do this, So I really go heavy into the drugs and alcohol with my brother. I'm pretty good.
Your junior, senior year of high school?
This is junior. I'd say it's junior year. It's like sophomore to junior year, because my senior year, I'm like, this is so stupid. I'm not doing this crap anymore. And I stopped. But I went really hard.
Just didn't resonate with you, huh?
It didn't stick. Had I had that addictive gene in me, for sure, like my brothers, I wouldn't have stopped. There was nothing to stop me.
It's so interesting, because the feeling you had of not feeling a part of is almost
it's universal to every addict and alcoholic. That's why I love them so much.
You put drugs and alcohol, and then all of a sudden we feel a part of, and
it helps.
Connected.
And it didn't do it for me.
So it didn't do it for you. So
no, it alienated me more.
Basically, you just didn't have that genetic part of you like your brother did and like I do. So
yeah, I really didn't, because people have asked me that, and they said, well, why was it different for you? I go, because literally one day I sat, this is a story that's like, oh my God, I can't believe I tell everybody this story, but I was with a girlfriend, and it was over the summer. I think it was the junior year, summer going into high school. I think this is how it ends for me. And I said, let's count how many days we're high in a row, just for shits and giggles. And so I start counting, and we hit day 45 is what I remember. I don't know if I'm making that up, but somehow that is the number that comes to mind. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I go, this is stupid. I cannot believe I'm sitting here doing with this. And I look at my girlfriend, who's totally high, and I go, this is the stupidest shit I've ever done in my life. I can't believe I'm still doing this, and I'm not doing this shit anymore. And I got up and walked out of her house, and that was it.
That was it.
I was done. I stopped every substance that I was using. I will continue to drink as an adult and through my college and stuff. I never abused it the way I abused it those 2 years, because it lost all its allure for me. I felt it was draining my life force, and it was dumbing me down. And I was so intent on keeping, my brain was the thing saving me.
Okay, so did you know you wanted to be a therapist in high school, or did you?
I knew I wanted to be a therapist when I was 12.
And so you knew that not only did you have the
I
personality,
always
need to know why. You're like, I'm going to be a therapist.
I always knew. I wrote about it. The first chapter of my book is describing how the concept of therapy that I own is so intertwined with figuring myself out.
Yeah.
And when I hit 12. Prior to that, I had seen the Charlie Brown series, and I saw Lucy with her psychiatrist sign spelled incorrectly with the 5 cents. And I go, you can get paid to listen to people's problems? And I was already nicknamed the Shrink in my junior high band. The band director nicknamed me the Shrink, because all the kids, instead of going to him, they'd go to Gina and talk to Gina about their problems. And I didn't understand. Really, it was a profession, and when I saw that, it cemented it for me, and I'm like, I can get paid to do this. I go, yeah, I'm doing this. It was so fulfilling for me to answer the questions that nobody was answering for me, and I had no life experience to draw from. I had kids talking about things I hadn't done yet, but yet I had an ability to never react to that or be judgmental. I love human beings. I love them. I don't care where they are, what they are, how they are. I don't care what they do. You know, I've always said to my kids will go, what if I was a serial murderer? Would you still love me? I said, yeah, I don't know how not to love you. Yeah. Not that I wouldn't feel some shame and I wouldn't feel hurt and I wouldn't be devastated. I don't know how to turn that off. And it was something I knew as a young child. Like, I had more ability to love others than I experienced them loving me, and it never changed. Yeah. And somehow I got okay with that. At first it was very codependent because I needed it back, and at some point I didn't need it back anymore. I just knew that's your purpose. You're here because you have that, and that is a beautiful thing to have, and it's very powerful, and it heals because it's healed me. The times that people have shown up, truly loved me, and given me that love that I needed unconditionally has been life-changing for me. And sometimes it happens sitting in the room with a client, and they've given that to me in spades. And I'll cry about that. And then sometimes it's been other people that you would expect, you know, my husband or my children. But when it's come in those forms that I could never expect, the blessing from that is astronomical for me. And it's sad to me that our kids are so lost in what their mission and purpose is. And, you know, the social media, which you and I do so well, and we're smart, we're business people, and we're just trying to advance our purpose through using the technology that's available to us. We've been through enough life story to understand we're never going to let it take over our ego and our person and our mission, right? But kids who come into this so vulnerable, a kid like me at 12 years old who would have found social media would have been devastated. Like, had I been abused on social media, or had I started to get what I needed from social media, I would have completely lost myself. I would have become addicted to the likes. I would have become addicted to you validating me, which would have ruined me, because it did in relationships. Needing people to validate me missed the whole point. We're only here to find ourselves, to heal ourselves, and through that we become a powerful force to guide and allow other people to heal. And you don't have to be a therapist to be that. You just have to be another human being willing to look at themselves enough to become the best version of yourself, instead of accepting lesser versions of you, the version of you that your mother told you were, your father, or your siblings. It's finding you and your true essence, the soul of you, the mission of you, the reason that you were birthed in the first place. And it's when you have that, nothing else matters. Yeah. It really doesn't. And no one else matters. And that sounds weird, but it's like, I will say, as much as I love my children and my husband, they can't be why I'm here. Because you know I'm fighting cancer. And I say to them, you can't be the reason. I have to be enough for me to want to be here, because I'm the one fighting, right? And I know that's so weird for people to understand, but I've always felt like if I'm not enough, no one's enough for me. Yeah. I have to get to that. That was the whole story of my story of healing as a love story is, and I have a chapter and it's called When Is Enough Enough, you know, and it's learning to not accept. We get so many messages about you're falling short. Yeah. Whether it's on the football field, or whether it's in the classroom, or whether it's with your parents, or whether it's at your first job, or we get so many messages about not good enough. And it's revolting, because we're creating this, and now with the social media just feeding into this bullying and critiquing and judging and piecemealing people. And
sure, and it's like, you know, as a kid,
we're adding to
even
it.
like as an adult, you look at
it's devastating
all the stuff
even
that
as an adult.
people want to put up there, and you know what, I put up there what I want to show
people. The trolls,
I'm not putting out, you just got an argument with my wife up there, or
all
I had
the nice
a bad
stuff.
day, or you know, something like
well,
that.
I am, and you know that.
Yeah, I know you.
I'm doing
you're
it.
comparing. They say this in the program. I'm comparing my insides to everybody else's outsides, and daily kids are seeing everybody else's outsides.
Right.
Where when we were kids, like, that's who you hung out with at school, but you know, it's like
not to this level.
Yeah,
not to this level
crazy.
Where we're losing. It's so, you know, the task and the mission of learning to love yourself enough and to be complete and whole within yourself, so that you can live out whatever a divine purpose is for you, whatever your task is while you're here, is the goal. But in the meantime, we're also here to serve. We can't do that without serving others. So please hear me that I'm not trying to create more egotism in the world. I'm saying the healing comes from that. When you do that, every day I'm trying to figure out what I can do for somebody. It's like the more I loved myself and healed myself, the more I want to give it away. I call these years my legacy years because of that. Yeah. I'm trying to leave, and I know that's normal developmentally for someone of my mature age, middle-aged, or whatever group I'm in now. And it's, yes, but it's because I came to have peace within myself that I want that for other people. Yeah. In a way that I've never wanted it for other people. And so people will ask me, how do you show up like that? Oh my God. When you have so much, I have so many struggles going on at the same time, and I say every one has been so humbling, every hurt, the pain of my children, what they've been going through mentally and physically, and then my own illness. It's so humbling. It reminds you don't have a permanent position on this earth. Your time isn't endless, no matter what you think. It might be infinite, but your time here is limited. And it's not meant to be wasted. And so what are you doing? Who are you being? Who are you with? Who are you loving? What are you contributing? And what are you leaving behind? Because you could be gone tomorrow. And that's a reality for me. And it's helped me to become so very present. To really love people when I see them, and I'm in constant gratitude. And it's really freaking hard. Like, people are like, it's okay if you don't feel grateful right now. Like, you've got cancer, and your kid just went through brain surgery, and your daughter's going through a trauma, healing around trauma, and your husband's losing his mind with the three of us circling his life. And, my work ended in December, at least that job, that never scares me, which that's what comes from age and time and wisdom, is you can always get another job. I haven't done that yet, but I'm piecemealing and putting things together, because I also believe in the divine timing of things. Is every time I get into something so painful like this with the cancer and losing the work at the same time, which is a great distraction for me, especially because I love it, there's a reason for this time. You're not meant to be there for a reason. You're looking to fill something in that you're not supposed to be filling in right now. And I realized I wanted to run away from some of the hurt that I was feeling in my children and not be present for that. As much as I was being present, a part of me wanted to escape it too. And job's a beautiful place to go escape it from.
Easy way to go.
Hey, sorry, I got to go to work, right? Yeah. We need the money. I'm providing, as well as serving a purpose. But I realized that we get so lost in that too. So with all the gifts I've gotten from my clients are so precious. And when I mean my clients, I'm talking 38 years of being a clinician with a practice that went on almost the whole time. I probably ended my practice about 10 years ago, but every treatment center that I've served, and there are 40 to 70 to 150 clients that I served over 3 decades. Start adding that up, and their families, it starts to light up the sky. You know what I mean? It starts to feel good in my mind to remember that connection and how they've touched me, and all the gifts that they've brought to me, and how grateful I am to have that escape. And then there's the reality of going, at the end of the day, when your time comes, who truly is going to be sitting right there holding your hand? It's going to be my husband and my kids. All those people who love me and everything, they'll show up if there's a memorial or whatever, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we forget how small our world really is and how important those people are to us, and the value of that family that we've created, that we chose to create. And to think about how much pain I was in, that I wanted to run from that and go hide in a job. And I'm grateful to the universe and God, or whatever you believe in, but I like them both. That said, you ain't going nowhere. You're going to sit in this. You're going to sit in this, and you're going to be present, as painful as it is, and walk through it. And it isn't that what we teach our clients anyways.
It's what we teach our clients.
Don't run.
And I still get fearful.
God,
I went through a little cancer bout a couple years ago.
I know you
told
and
you
I have
about
that in common.
And I was scared. But
that's a terrible word to hear. anytime in your life.
When that doctor said cancer and he did his fist like that, he's like this old guy. Looks like the guy from Back to the Future, the professor. I wanted to climb over his desk and wring his neck. Like, I'm like, what did you say?
Yes.
There's no one to me? Like, what?
I know.
But I was surprisingly calm.
I know.
For what I thought I would be through the process.
Right.
And I think going through that in my 50s, if I'd have gone through something like that in my
Younger?
30s,
Oof.
and it's like you talk about where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to be there, and you look back on your life and you go, man, if that didn't happen, this didn't happen, I don't have my kids, I don't have my wife, like all these things had to line up perfect for us to be where we are today. You start to get that sense of
absolutely,
like there is some kind of divine
plan feels
for
that way.
me, but it's strange. Like the older I get, the more I feel that. But then you start going, oh man, it's like this starts working better and this starts working better, but all this muscle like walking stuff starts, the health stuff starts,
I think two things you said, and it brought up to me thinking about talking to somebody this week, and I said, aging is not for the faint at heart. And the other thing is I've heard quoted by somebody, I'm sorry, I can't quote them, but, brave is the thing you are when you have no choice. And both those things are true, and as we're aging, I think we do become more brave because we don't have a choice. And things like cancer face you, and losing loved ones in volumes faces you, and limitations in your body that you can't even imagine start to face you. And your mind too, at some point, I'm always praying for that to stay very present. I got to watch my father the last 7 years go into the life of Alzheimer's, and had that reality as well, and understanding as well. And the many gifts my father gave me from that first time he got sick when he was 45, by the way, remember I said his odds, they gave him a 50-50 chance. Yeah. My dad wound up living till he was 80.
Oh, wow.
He broke all the odds. The heart, the valves that they put in my dad were like pigskin or whatever, and at that time was like an experimental thing. And every man that was in that room with my father, there was 4 men that got that same surgery. They all died except my father. And he follows that surgery with 2 strokes, lives beyond those strokes, again, given even worse odds. He was paralyzed on the right side of his body, and didn't have functioning of his right leg, his right arm. And I was married before, and when I walked down the aisle the first time, my dad is limping and leaning his full weight on me to be able to walk down the aisle. And later, he then gets prostate cancer and beats that, and then he goes in and he gets Alzheimer's, he beats that. Now, why am I saying to you, the one common thread in every illness my father had was whenever you asked him, how are you doing, Dad? He'd say, I'm perfect. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm great. It's a good day. Yeah. And I'm perfect. And he would say to his doctors, I'm going to be fine. It's not my time. It's not my time. I've said all of this to my doctors, and I've said, your mindset is the greatest asset that you have. Yeah. And despite whatever timing, there's divine timing in all of it. I don't have to surrender before that timing comes, right? Right. So he would continue to say that all the way till the end into his Alzheimer's. And I will say this, I have never seen a more pleasant, kind, hilarious Alzheimer patient than my father, because they get very persnickety, angry, defensive. Yeah. They can become very aggressive. He was funny as shit. And he knew he had Alzheimer's, and so he started really speaking his mind. And I remember him teasing one of my cousins about her tattoos. He hated tattoos, his generation probably. And he's like, oh my God, you got that again. I go, Dad, every time you see her, you tell her something. Who cares? What do I care? I'm not going to remember in 5 minutes. So he was like, I'm not going to remember. I'm going to say whatever I want. And he made fun of it. And what a way to live our lives. Just don't take yourself so serious. I mean, it's again, why he was my person, because I would go on to have so many medical issues, so many hurdles I had to face. And if I lived in my mom's cup, which is always half empty, oh my God, the worst is going to happen. I'm so scared, worrywart of the century, I would have not, I don't even think I'd still be here. I had to live in my dad's, which the glass is always full. It's overflowing. You don't have to worry about anything. You got this. And I'm not going till I'm ready to go. And he would tell me I go, Dad, you're a Timex. The old Timex watch commercial, you take a licking but keep on ticking. Mm-hmm. That was our nickname for him. Yeah. And when it was the very end, I go, dude, seriously, I know you're a Timex. Is it time yet? And he goes, it's time. Yeah, and he told me. Yeah. And within that month, my dad passed. And he knew. And it was an agreement we had. I said, I need to know. I want to be prepared for this because you keep dying on me and coming back like Lazarus. So come on, get down. And he said, it's time. And he showed me so much grace he was so happy to be alive. Life was such a gift to him he changed. From that 45 on, that was his spiritual awakening. He became a very different man. He wasn't angry anymore and loud and self-centered and selfish. He became very much a man of service. He started volunteering and helping. He would help anybody, anywhere, at any time with stuff we didn't even have to give away. He would give away money and shirt and car and house. And I mean, we were like a lower middle class family, and my parents were constantly giving it away. And he would live that way the rest of his life. And I think, you got it right, Dad.
Yeah.
You got it right. And so I aim to be that daughter, that example of my father and my mother. She would give me many different lessons about patience and resilience beyond. But and I think it's a good lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though our parents weren't perfect, they brought a lot of stuff to I think grit, determination.
That resilience.
Resilience.
Wow.
What
That's
a beautiful
powerful
story about your father honoring you as being a driven woman. That inspires me. I mean, I have a 4-year-old little girl, and I think I told you this story. She was rough with a couple kids on the playground.
Yeah, you told me.
The preschool teacher says, "Oh, you need to have her evaluated." And I'm like, "Would you say that if she was a boy?"
Yeah, I need to have you evaluated. Right?
Yeah.
We get to have more space now to honor our children being different.
Right.
That wasn't, as I said, that's my whole story. Wasn't okay, and it really freaking is okay. It's great, and it's finding what is my child's different compared to yours, and that's okay.
And celebrate that and honor that and
respect it.
Because I probably met can count on one hand somebody that's known what they've wanted to do since they were 12 years old.
Nobody tells me that story.
So many young people and talking to Cole earlier about coaching and being around thousands of people and
that was one of the greatest gifts God has given me.
I know one kid that's 27 that always wanted to be a firefighter. Now he's a firefighter.
And he is. I love it.
But that's it. Out of all.
Me too. Nobody in my family, none of my friends, none of my cousins. It's it came to me like the greatest gift and shot from the spirit of whatever, the universe. Yeah. And it was as soon as I did it, it was there's nothing else I would have done. There was no other thing. For a minute, I entertained being a lawyer because I love debating.
Right.
I'll debate you till the cows come home.
You'd be a good lawyer.
Yeah, and it's that same inquisitive mind, and I love the drama of it, and I love, the intensity and all that. But I got to do that through therapy, doing psychodrama, right? So I got to feed that other side of me, the actress, the musician, the whatever. But, as you said, it's that knowing was so powerful in me, and it's been such an incredible gift. Being able to give it back tenfold because I chose that profession I'm sure I would have done it in other ways, in other professions, but it was this was made for me. It was made for me.
Yeah.
So,
the neat thing is, we talked about kind of the negative part about social media, but the positive part is mental health starting to become more acceptable and getting help for addiction and opening up to
there's
problems.
So many beautiful things about
come out, and so that's kind of neat. So I know you got to get to your next appointment, but I want to ask you the last question I always ask anybody. What's your message out there to somebody that's struggling, maybe with depression, that needs help, and just doesn't know where to turn or what to do? What would you tell that person? What would you want that person to hear?
You, within yourself, is an entire universe, and that universe is waiting for expression that no other human being on the planet can give or bring. You are that powerful, that wonderful, that needed, that important. No matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, no matter what stories, fear, shame, hurt, criminal behavior, anything that you're carrying as a burden with you right now, the essence of who you are is that powerful. and requires you to show up for it, and you deserve that. Healing is meant for you. It's not reserved for the rich or the special. It is absolutely yours, and you should never deny yourself that, and know wherever you are right now, it is yours to claim. You just have to claim it, and every door will open for you, and you'll be the person you always envisioned yourself to be and deserve to be.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
All right.
It was my pleasure.
All right.
My honor, actually.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.